In this video, we'll be discussing the Queen and King's chambers. Both chambers will be constructed using the same method, so I'll be referring only to the Queen's chamber. It has to be noted that there are two methods I came up with for this chamber, and unfortunately I made this model using a method that I've ultimately decided is flawed, or at the very least much more difficult than the alternative method. After completing this model, I knew I was going to need to build the alternative method to show the true example that I believe is the right one. But I was anxious to get these videos up, so I decided to go ahead and show this version and post the other at a later date. Nevertheless, here is one example of how the chamber could be built. And just to let you know, the alternative method is completely different than this one, and will include a technique that I've yet to have shown. A technique that I at one point was using to move every single stone. And on that note, I would like to point out the fact that there are many different methods that I could use that could be used to build the pyramid's construction. But after obsessive years of designing, I did my absolute best to choose the methods that I believe were the most efficient. And here's one of those methods that ultimately I think is going to get thrown away. Starting off with a frame where a layer would get built around it. So we're going to have a hollowed out spot ready for the Queen's chamber. We're starting off with 6 stones in place. There's an example of the stone. That'll represent a single stone. 6 in place. If you could do it with number 7, you could easily do it with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. So the first thing that we'd have to do is we'd have to roll in the stone using the roller technique. You would use a lift rack with a brace on it, so that way as it lifted the stone, it would come into place. You'd need to lift it up a little bit more than it would be set at. You would then bring in this frame, which, once set in place, holds the stone. And as you can see here, there will be a gap. So we'd have to close this gap up right here. So we have 2 pole racks set up and a swing rack. The pole racks are pulling on the swing rack. You then add your weight. You would be adding weight as well to the pole racks, but I decided not to use it because they weren't necessary at this time. Now, as you can see, there's going to be a gap here up the top, which means that you would need to put either a swing rack right there or set up a pole rack to be pulling on that spot, or a team of workers as well. Another one reason why I think this thing was flawed, that isn't the main reason why I think this method is flawed. The main reason I think it's flawed has to do with the next part, which would be lining up stone number 2. It's not that it couldn't technically be done, but you'll see when I post the video of the other method. It just works much better. So you would do the same thing with this stone. You'd pull it in slightly to the side. You would then use a longer little frame, so that way when it lifts up, you can put it in here and it holds the stone in place, and you have a much bigger gap you'd have to fill in, but you would use the same trick.